Welcome to Damn Good Movie Memories with your host, Brian Davis. This podcast is the cure for your long commute and super boring workday. Hey there, it's Brian Davis, and for this week's episode, we're going to cover the movie Miracle on 34th Street, the original from 1947. The studio was 20th Century Fox. The release date was June 11th, 1947. The running time, 96 minutes, and it was in black and white. Leonard Maltin from his Classic Movie Guide gives it 3.5 out of 4 stars. He writes, classic fable of Kris Kringle, played by Edmund Gwenn, working in Macy's, encountering an unbelieving child, Natalie Wood, and going on trial to prove that he's Santa. It's a delightful fantasy comedy. So it seems like there are many, many classic Christmas-themed films, but Miracle on 34th Street has to be, I think, in the top 3 of most lists. And as a kid, I think A Christmas Story was always tops for me, but Miracle on 34th Street, I think it's a close second. Okay, let's get into the making of the film. So nobody thought this film would be a hit at the box office at the time, let alone a bona fide holiday classic. I mean, who releases a Christmas movie in June? And that's exactly what 20th Century Fox did with Miracle on 34th Street. However, there was some strategy to this unorthodox release date. Now, their theory being that more people go to the movies during the summer, especially kids who are out of school. So when Fox advertised the film, it was concealed initially that it was a Christmas movie. And if you look at the vintage movie posters, you really can't tell if it's a holiday film. Also, the trailer was very inventive and unconventional and longer than a typical trailer at 5 minutes in length. So I'll play it for you now.
That's no good. Turn it off. Stop it. Turn it off. That won't work. It's no good. What do you make a trailer for? To give the public an idea of what kind of a picture to expect.
But, boss, we...
Hilarious, romantic, tender, exciting. Make up your minds. It can't be all of those things.
Mr. Schaefer, if you'd look at the picture...
I don't have to look at the picture. I know you're wrong. Tender, exciting. Why, they're practically opposites. You've got to decide what kind of a picture this is. Is it a romantic love story? Is it an exciting thriller? Is it a hilarious comedy? Make up your minds. Now go to work and fix it up. Hey, Rex. How are you?
Ed, how are you?
Good to see you. How's the ghost of Mrs. Muir?
It's pretty good, honey. How's New York?
Fine. Say, Rex, have you seen Miracle on 34th Street?
Yes, saw the preview. I've never heard laughs like it in the theater before.
Oh, is that right?
Don't miss it. I was crazy about it.
You really think we've got something, huh?
I don't know whether the women will like it, but it's a great man's picture. Well, it's nice to see you, Ed. Got to get back to work.
Yeah. See you later. Oh, I'm sorry. Ann Baxter, good to see you.
How are you?
I haven't seen you since the Academy Awards. Congratulations on winning that Oscar.
Thanks, Ed, very much.
Oh, say, Ann.
Yeah.
Have you seen Miracle on 34th Street?
Have I? Ed, it's wonderful.
Yeah, I understand it's a pretty good comedy.
Comedy? Well, I suppose that's true. I had a million laughs, but the thing that got me were the tears in between. It's so tender and charming and warm. I don't know how the men are going to like it. It's a great woman's picture.
Is that so?
Oh, there's one scene between John Payne and Maureen O'Hara where he's trying to prove... No, I'm not going to spoil it for you. You go and see it. I'm sorry, Mr. Schaefer. I'm just learning to drive.
So I see. How are you, Peggy Ann?
I'm fine now that I know I didn't hit you.
Tell me, have you seen Miracle on 34th Street?
3 times, and it's simply groovy. Mr. Gwenn's just wonderful. You know, we worked together in Bob Son of Battle.
Yeah, I saw it. He's great in it.
Wait till you see him in this. You'll love him, and you'll love the picture, too. I tell you, it's a groovy movie. Don't you think so, Dick? Dick?
Yeah.
Dick Hames, I didn't see you.
Well, I've been on the floor. That sudden stop got me. Oh, but seriously, Peggy's right. That Miracle on 34th Street is really something. You know, with me, moving pictures have got to move. They've got to be exciting and different, and this thing is really it. It's the most unusual story that I've ever seen. In the last 20 minutes of the picture had me sitting on the edge of my seat every second of the time. And what a finish.
Yeah, maybe I ought to take a look at it.
Well, if you run it again, tell me about it.
Okay, we're ready.
That is the greatest picture I have ever made. And I've got the angle on the trailer. Boys, we've got to get across to the public that that picture has everything. Why, it's hilarious. It's romantic. It's tender. It's charming. It's delightful. It's exciting. And it's groovy.
Yes, Mr. Schaefer.
That does it, boss.
Mr. Schaefer, you've got a great idea.
Naturally. Now, I'll tell you what we do.
So the story of how the film was made began on Christmas Eve of 1944, when screenwriter Valentine Davies pushed through the crowds at a jam-packed department store doing his last-minute Christmas shopping, looking specifically for a gift for his wife. Seeing the madness of how people were acting and how the holiday was so commercialized, an idea popped into Davies' mind as he wondered what Santa Claus would think of all this shopping craziness. And this was the inspiration for Davies to write the story which would become Miracle on 34th Street. Davies presented his idea and story to writer-director George Seaton, who loved the premise and thought it would be a terrific film. After a full year of writing and collaborating, in June of 1946, their screenplay was optioned by 20th Century Fox, even though there still wasn't a title to the screenplay at the time. Some of these title ideas included Mr. Kringle, Miracle on Herald Square, The Big Heart, and It's Only Human. But even though Fox picked up the screenplay, they only considered it a low-budget B film and just another Santa Claus film. Maureen O'Hara was one of the most reliable and successful actresses working for Fox at the time, and she was their pick, Daryl Zanuck's pick specifically, for the lead role as Doris Walker. However, it wasn't a great time in the life of O'Hara. World War II had just ended, and she wanted to head back to her home country of Ireland to see her parents, whom she wasn't able to see due to the ban of international traveling for non-U.S. citizens looking to return back to their home countries during the war. O'Hara was in the United States due to her movie acting contract. But just as she reached Dublin, the studio called her to say that she needed to return back to New York City immediately to begin shooting for Miracle on 34th Street. O'Hara was furious at the time, and was almost ready to quit acting and hate the script before even reading it. But once she landed in New York and was given the script, her attitude quickly changed because she knew how good it was. John Payne also worked under contract to Fox and was given the part of Fred Gailey. Payne was a solid working actor, but Miracle would go on to be his most well-known role on film. He had also worked on 2 films with O'Hara prior, To the Shores of Tripoli and Sentimental Journey, and they remained great friends for the rest of their careers. Casting the part of Kris Kringle was absolutely vital to get correct. Otherwise, the film simply wouldn't work. Fox selected British character actor Edmund Gwenn, who is known for his films Pride and Prejudice and Lassie Come Home. Now, if you've seen the film, you know that nobody else could have played the part of Santa Claus better than Gwenn. And people who worked with him said his real-life personality was very similar to how he was as Kris Kringle. Gwenn was always friendly and jovial, with a twinkle in his eye. The crew, and along with younger actors in the film, raved years later that when they were older adults, how generous Gwenn was with his time on set, and was very encouraging to the new actors learning their craft. For the part of Susan, Fox selected 8-year-old Natalie Wood. Now, Wood's acting schedule was incredibly full, as in addition to working on Miracle, she was also in 2 other films at the same time, those being The Ghost and Mrs. Muir and Skidahoo, Skidahay. It's no wonder her professionalism at a young age translated into one of the few child actors who continued their success into their adult years. The 8-year-old actress would shuttle back and forth to different sets, all the while keeping track of her different roles and accents. It's actually quite astounding when you think about it. And you watch her childhood performances, they really do rival Shirley Temple in terms of high quality. Wood was blessed with a photographic memory and would often cue the older actors if they would miss their lines or their marks. Wood was so enamored with Edmund Gwenn, she was convinced he really was Santa. I mean, she was still a child after all. And during the wrap-up party, she was stunned to see Gwenn when he arrived without a beard that he had grown for the entire time while shooting. He shaved after the film. Wood also adored working with Maureen O'Hara, who she called Mama Maureen. O'Hara actually called her Natasha, which was actually Natalie Wood's birth name. Director George Seaton's biggest challenge was getting the approval of the 2 largest department stores at the time, and that was Macy's and Gimbel's, and to get them to agree for the brands to be used in the film. And both stores withheld their permission to use their names until after they viewed the finished film. I mean, this could have been a complete disaster, and was incredibly stressful for the filmmaker. If one or both disliked the film's portrayal of their store, the studio would have to radically recut the film, and that would cost a fortune. So it was a huge risk to go ahead on faith and film this without approval, but that's exactly what happened. Seaton eventually showed the finished film separately to the owners of each store, and no surprise, they both loved the film. And that was a huge relief to both Seaton and 20th Century Fox. The other risk taken by Seaton was that he wanted to film the opening scenes during the actual Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, and that's exactly what he did on Thanksgiving Day in 1946. And the problem with this is that he was filming scenes of the parade without a finished script. So Fox didn't want to pay for this Thanksgiving Day shoot, but Seaton was adamant that the scenes were necessary for the realism, and that he'd pay for it himself if Fox wouldn't agree. But Fox ultimately agreed to cover the shooting costs. The actors were told that all their scenes had to be filmed quickly and correctly because it was a one-time deal. The parade wasn't going to start over for them to reshoot their scenes. Maureen O'Hara had always said that filming Miracle was one of the most enjoyable times she ever had making a film, which, considering how upset she initially was about having to leave Ireland for New York, that's quite astounding. But the enjoyment of all the actors is seen throughout the performances, and it's why the film is truly a classic to this day, and always will be. But again, Fox wasn't sure the film was going to be a hit at the time, but their doubts were quelled when they previewed the film for audiences, and the reactions were incredibly enthusiastic. Often the audiences were applauding at the end of the film. Miracle on 34th Street went on to be one of the most successful films of the year and ran almost half the year, all the way through Christmas. Okay, let's get into the film. So it opens with Kris Kringle, of course that's Edmund Gwenn, walking the downtown streets of New York City. He notices a shop clerk setting up a window display with Santa's sleigh and the reindeers. Kris knocks on the window to inform the clerk that he has the reindeers placed incorrectly. Kris would know better than anyone, of course. Now the shopkeeper is polite, but thinks the kind man with the long white beard is probably delusional and wishes him farewell. We're then taken to the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, and we're introduced to Doris Walker, Maureen O'Hara. And she's an event coordinator for Macy's. She obviously has her hands full, to say the least. Kris attends the parade and is horrified to see how uncoordinated the man playing Santa is and standing on the float, and how he's acting. Kris discovered that the man is drunk and scolds him. Kris finds out that the person in charge of the parade is Doris and reports the drunken Santa. Doris then finds the belligerent Santa, and he's completely passed out. Desperate, Doris asks Kris if he can fill in, since he definitely looks the part of Santa. Initially, Kris refuses because it's a bit of an indignity to him, but then he realizes he just can't let down the children who expect to see Santa in the parade, and he agrees to Doris's offer. Kris, no surprise, is a huge hit. He delights the crowd with his enthusiastic and realistic portrayal of Santa. Now, we as the audience know why, but we're not there yet. Doris, who's satisfied that the parade is going well, heads to her apartment, which is also on the same street as the parade. Doris is a divorced single mother. Her young daughter Susan, played by Natalie Wood, is watching the parade with one of the neighbors named Fred Gailey, played by John Payne. Fred is an attorney and always kind to the good-natured Susan. Now, Susan is much like her mother in the sense that she was always taught not to believe in fairy tales or the fun childhood traditions like Santa Claus. Since Doris is often working, the kind-hearted Fred often entertains Susan when her mother is not around. Susan has actually never met her biological father. He and Doris divorced when Susan was just an infant. Doris finally meets Fred the day of the parade. Susan coaxes Doris to invite Fred over for Thanksgiving dinner, and Doris reluctantly agrees as she wasn't planning on entertaining guests. But she can't say no to Susan's pleas, especially considering she was coached by Fred, who wanted to be invited over for dinner since he wants to get to know the single Doris. In the meantime, Chris was such a hit as Santa, Macy hires him to be the Santa inside the store. But it comes with strings attached.
Before you go up on the floor, I just want to give you a few tips on how to be a good Santa Claus.
Go right ahead.
Well, here's a list of toys that we have to push, things that we're overstocked on. Now, you'll find that a great many children will be undecided as to what they want for Christmas. When that happens, you immediately suggest one of these items. You understand?
I certainly do.
Good. Now, you memorize that list and I'll... Oh, never mind. I'll tell you, when you've finished, come up to the 7th floor. I'll be waiting for you.
Imagine making a child take something it doesn't want just because he bought too many of the wrong toys. That's what I've been fighting against for years, the way they commercialize Christmas.
Yeah, there's a lot of bad isms floating around this world, but one of the worst is commercialism. Make a buck, make a buck. Even in Brooklyn, it's the same. Don't care what Christmas stands for. Just make a buck, make a buck. Oh, don't bother. I'll put it away for you.
Huh? Oh, thank you, Alfred. And what should I do with these?
Throw them on the floor. I get kind of tired just sweeping up dust. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Alfred.
Well, Chris does things his own way in the spirit of the holiday season, as he truly wants to make people happy.
Yes. Peter's a fine name. What do you want for Christmas, Peter?
I want a fire engine just like the big ones, only smaller. It has a hose that squirts well hot water, and I won't do it in the house. I'll only do it in the backyard. I promise.
Macy's ain't got any. Nobody's got any.
Well, Peter, I can tell you're a good boy. You'll get your fire engine.
Oh, thank you very much. You see? I told you he'd get me one.
That's fine. That's just dandy. Listen, you wait over there. Mama wants to thank Santa Claus, too. Say, listen, what's the matter with you? Don't you understand English? I tell you, Macy's ain't got any. Nobody's got any. I've been all over. My feet are killing me. Fine thing, promising the kid.
Now, you don't think I would have said that unless I was sure, do you? You can get those fire engines at Schoenfeld's on Lexington Avenue. Only $8.50, a wonderful bargain.
Schoenfeld's? I don't get it.
Oh, I keep track of the toy market pretty closely. Does that surprise you, sir?
Surprise me. Macy's sending people to other stores. Are you kidding me?
Well, the only important thing is to make the children happy. And whether Macy or somebody else sells a toy doesn't make any difference. Don't you feel that way?
Huh? Who, me? Oh, yeah, sure. Only I didn't know Macy's did.
Well, as long as I'm here, they do.
I don't get it. No? I just don't get it.
The last scene with the kid's mother was played by the great character actress Thelma Ritter, and it was actually her film debut. While the parents love what Chris is doing by not just focusing on what Macy's has in stock, the toy department manager is infuriated when he finds out what Chris is doing. However, it's Thelma Ritter that appears again to tell the manager how wonderful it is to see that Macy's is putting the spirit of Christmas ahead of pure commercialism, and that she will do more shopping at Macy's than she did before because of this. The amount of positive feedback of Chris playing Santa and telling the parents where to get the best and most available deals on toys is overwhelming. Fred decides to take Susan to go see Santa, but Susan isn't enthusiastic because she's been told by Doris that Santa isn't real. Chris does his best to try to convince Susan that he's really Santa, but she simply won't buy it. Doris takes Fred aside, saying that she's not trying to be a cold-hearted mother, but that she wants Susan to have a sense of reality and doesn't believe in lying to Susan just for the sake of her being a kid. But this negative attitude towards fairy tales is more of a Doris hang-up, as her own Prince Charming, Susan's father, That just didn't work out the way it was supposed to happen. So the resentment Doris has is being passed along to Susan under the guise of being quote-unquote honest with Susan. While Doris and Fred talk, Susan goes back to the side stage, where she sees something unexpected from Chris, who is talking to a child who doesn't speak English.
Well, young lady, and what's your name?
I'm sorry, she doesn't speak English. She's Dutch. She just came over. She's been living in an orphan's home in Rotterdam ever since, well, we've adopted her. I told her you wouldn't be able to speak to her, but when she saw you in the parade yesterday, she said you were Santa Claus, as she calls you, and you could talk to her. Well, I didn't know what to do.
Hallo, ik ben blij dat je gekomen bent.
Oh, u bent Sinterklaas.
Ja, zeker.
Ik wist het wel. Ik was zeker dat u het zou begrijpen.
Natuurlijk. Zeg maar wat je zou willen hebben van Sinterklaas.
Niks. Ik heb van alles. Ik wil alleen maar bij deze lieve dame zijn.
Wil je wat voor mij zingen?
Sinterklaas kapoentje, geef het in mijn schoentje, geef het in mijn laarsje. Dank u Sinterklaasje. Sinterklaas kapoentje, geef wat in mijn schoentje, geef wat in mijn laarsje.
Susan is amazed that Chris knew how to speak Dutch fluently. And by the way, thanks to the power of the internet, there are good things about the internet from time to time, the translation of the conversation between Chris and the Dutch girl goes like this. So Santa says, "I'm happy that you came to visit me." And the Dutch girl replies, "You really are Sinterklaas." Sinterklaas is a Dutch tradition where Santa Claus is based on, so she calls her Sinterklaas. And Santa says, "I sure am." And the Dutch girl says, "I knew you would understand." And Santa says, "Of course, you can tell me whatever you want from Santa Claus." And the Dutch girl says, "I want nothing. I already got a lot of things. The only thing I want is to be with this lovely lady." Santa says, "Do you want to sing something for me?" And the Dutch girl and Santa sing a Dutch song about Sinterklaas. Susan tells Doris what she saw and that maybe Chris really is Santa Claus. Doris tries to rationalize that it's just a myth about Santa.
What I'm trying to explain to you is, come in.
You said you wanted to see me, Mrs. Walker.
Come right in.
Hello there. Good to see you again.
It's nice to see you.
You're awfully lucky, Mrs. Walker. Lovely little girl you have here.
Thank you. And Susan's the reason I asked you to drop down. She's a little confused, and I thought maybe you could help to straighten her out.
I'd be glad to.
Would you please tell her that you're not really Santa Claus? That there actually is no such person?
Well, I'm sorry to disagree with you, Mrs. Walker, but not only is there such a person, but here I am to prove it.
No. You misunderstand. I want you to tell her the truth. What's your name?
Chris Kringle. I'll bet you're in the first grade.
Second.
I mean your real name.
That is my real name. Second grade?
It's a progressive school.
Oh, it's a progressive school.
May I have this gentleman's employment card, please?
Yes, Mrs. Walker.
This dress is very cute. Where did you get such a lovely outfit?
Here at Macy's, we get 10% off.
Please don't feel that you have to keep pretending for Susan's benefit. She's a very intelligent child and always wants to know the absolute truth.
Good, because I always tell the absolute truth. Now, about your school. What's the name of your teacher?
Mrs. Haney.
Mrs. Haney.
Here it is, Mrs. Walker.
Thank you.
Well, what else do you do besides read and play games?
We have rest periods. 1/2 hour.
Oh, I don't suppose you care for that, eh?
No, we're not allowed to talk or anything. Tuesday, Chester Richards, he kept talking all the time.
My, that was bad, eh?
Yes, Mrs. Haney made him stay resting all alone for nearly an hour.
Susan, dear, would you go out and talk to Miss Adams for a minute, and I'll be right with you?
All right. Goodbye.
Goodbye, young lady. Hope to see you again.
Thank you. I hope so, too. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
I'm sorry, Mr.
Kringle?
I'm sorry, but we're going to have to make a change.
Change?
The Santa Claus that we had 2 years ago is back in town, and I feel that we owe it to him.
Have I done something wrong?
Oh, no.
By the way, when Doris reads Chris's employment card, it says the following. The address is for the Brooks Memorial Home of the Aged. His date of birth says, as old as my tongue and a little bit older than my teeth. Place is the North Pole, of course. Next of kin, Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, Vixen, Comet, Cupid, and Donner. Now on the card, Donder is what is also used, not Donner, and of course Blitzen. Doris is called away to meet with Mr. Macy and asks for Chris to wait in her office. Mr. Macy is incredibly happy with the amount of positive feedback about Chris sending customers to competing stores. He decides not to just limit the new policy to Santa, but every salesperson in every department in Macy's. The amount of goodwill generated by Macy's will make customers flock to Macy's first before any other department store. No more high-pressure sales tactics. Macy's will be the customer-first store, and in turn, they'll get even more sales because they won't act pushy. As expected, Doris is stunned to hear about this new store policy and has no other choice but to keep Chris on as Santa.
You see, Mrs. Walker, this is quite an opportunity for me. For the past 50 years or so, I've been getting more and more worried about Christmas. Seems we're all so busy trying to beat the other fellow in making things go faster and look shinier and cost less that Christmas and I are sort of getting lost in the shuffle.
Oh, I don't think so. Christmas is still Christmas.
Oh, Christmas isn't just a day. It's a frame of mind. And that's what's been changing. That's why I'm glad I'm here. Maybe I can do something about it. And I'm glad I met you and your daughter. You two are a test case for me.
We are?
Yes, you're sort of the whole thing in miniature. If I can win you over, there's still hope. If not, then I guess I'm through. But I'm warning you, I don't give up easily. Good night.
Good night. Oh, Mr. Kringle,
Yeah?
the first thing in the morning, would you report to Mr. Sawyer's office?
Sawyer?
Yes, he'll just give you a little examination. Oh, we do it with all our employees.
A mental examination?
Well,
Oh, I don't mind. I've taken dozens of them. Never failed one yet. Know them by heart. How many days in the week? 7. How many fingers do you see? 4. Muscular coordination test. No damage to the nervous system. Who was the first president of the United States? George Washington. Who was the vice president under John Quincy Adams? Daniel D. Tompkins, and I'll bet your Mr. Sawyer doesn't know that. Good night.
I mean, how can you not help but love Chris? Even the hardest cases like Doris start to thaw out in front of him. All right, normally I would go further, but that would kind of spoil the fun for the people, who, however rare it may be, who still haven't seen this film. Plus, I do have a great radio adaptation with all of the same cast appearing, so you can listen to that if you don't have time to see the film itself, but you really should see it. In the final hour of the film, you will see if Santa can convince not just Doris and Susan about who he really is, but the entire world. If you haven't seen the film, you might possibly guess the ultimate outcome, but that's not really a spoiler because the ride getting there is very enjoyable and it's very heartwarming. And the film has one of the most entertaining courtroom scenes in film history, along with the appearance of William Frawley, of course played Fred Mertz on I Love Lucy, in a great character role. So while there have been multiple remakes of Miracle on 34th Street, they're all inferior. The original from 1947 is absolutely still the best, and with the best cast as well. It's a film that never gets old, and frankly, you can watch it even when it's not the holiday season, as the original release of the film proved. All right, some fun facts. The film was nominated for 4 Oscars, and it won 3. It won Best Supporting Actor for Edmund Gwenn, Best Original Story, and Best Screenplay for Valentine Davies. It did lose Best Picture to Gentleman's Agreement, which had Gregory Peck and Dorothy McGuire and John Garfield, and that's a terrific film, but it's not revered to this day, and it's not an iconic film like Miracle on 34th Street. When Edmund Gwenn accepted his Best Supporting Actor Oscar, he said, "Now I know there's a Santa Claus." Edmund Gwenn gained 30 pounds to play Kris Kringle. John Payne had hoped to do a sequel to his dying day and even took matters into his own hands. Maureen O'Hara said that John really believed in and loved Miracle on 34th Street, and he always wanted to do a sequel. We talked about it for years, and eventually, he even wrote a screenplay sequel. He was going to send it to me, but tragically died before he could get around to it. I never saw it, and I've often wondered what happened to it. All right, as promised, I do have a Lux Radio Theater adaptation, which came out in December 22nd of 1947, and again features the same cast of Maureen O'Hara, Natalie Wood, John Payne, and Edmund Gwenn. So enjoy that, and I'll be back next week with yet another random movie from my DVD collection.
Greetings from Washington, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, I wish I could be with you in person, but we've been busy all this past week filming scenes here at the FBI headquarters. Meanwhile, I know you're in capable hands with the cast of tonight's great screenplay, Miracle on 34th Street, from my home studio, 20th Century Fox. We're particularly gratified to have the original stars of the picture, Maureen O'Hara, John Payne, Edmund Gwenn, and Natalie Wood. Miracle on 34th Street takes up a question as old as the spirit of Christmas itself. Is there a Santa Claus? And answers that question very happily. This Christmas week, when most of us think of Lux Flakes as a friendly gift, I'm in the position of thanking Lux Flakes for a friendly gift. The opportunity to be with you at this Christmas presentation through the magic medium of radio. But I imagine many of you housewives feel grateful also, if for different reasons. Lux Flakes, I'm sure, hold out to you the gift of greater leisure, longer life for your precious fabrics, added sparkle to your silverware and dishes. And here's another present to you from Lux, as our curtain rises on Act One of Miracle on 34th Street, starring Maureen O'Hara as Doris Walker, John Payne as Fred Gailey, Edmund Gwenn as Chris Kingle, and Natalie Wood as Susan Walker.
It's Thanksgiving Day in New York City. On Fifth Avenue, adjoining Central Park, an annual event is being joyfully awaited. The spectacular parade presented by Macy's Department Store to herald in the Christmas season. A little away from the crowd are two of Macy's public relations experts.
He's simply wonderful, Mrs. Walker. Just look at him on that float. The most realistic Santa Claus we've ever had. Why, he didn't even need any padding, did he?
Padding?
Well, didn't you notice his tummy? So round, so firm, so fully packed. Well, now that everything's under control, where on earth did you find him?
I don't know. I just turned around and there he was.
And to think that the man whose place he took was intoxicated.
With a breath that would knock over a reindeer.
Oh, what if Mr. Macy had seen him?
What if Mr. Gimble had seen him? Competition between our stores is tough enough as it is.
Well, the parade's starting. Let's stand at the curb.
Not I, Mr. Shellhammer. I'm going home and relax. Anyway, I can see it from there. I live just around the corner.
Oh, so you do. Well, see you tomorrow, Mrs. Walker. And congratulations on finding the best Santa Claus in Macy's history.
Certainly is a wonderful parade, Susan. Just look at that clown. Gosh, what a giant.
Giant, Mr. Gailey? There are no such things as giants.
Well, not now, maybe, but in olden days there's...
Really, Mr. Gailey? And you a lawyer?
Well, what about the giant that Jack killed? You know, Jack and the Beanstalk?
Everybody knows that's a fairy tale. And I agree with my mother. Fairy tales are silly.
Oh. Come in.
Good afternoon. I'm Susan's mother. My maid said...
Hello, Mother. I'm watching the parade. Mr. Gailey invited me.
Hello, darling.
Susie's told me quite a lot about you, Mrs. Walker.
She's told me quite a lot about you, too, the man in the front department.
This is all part of a plot, Mrs. Walker. I'm very fond of Susie, but I also wanted to meet you.
At least you're frank. Don't even mention the name.
Why not, Mother?
That Santa Claus you see is a last-minute substitute.
But why?
Well, remember the way the janitor was last New Year's?
Oh, my. Tight as an owl.
I see Susie doesn't believe in Santa Claus either.
That's right. She never has.
Well, that's the end of the parade. Mother, I've been thinking. It's Thanksgiving, and there are only two of us. Couldn't we invite Mr. Gailey?
Well,
Oh, please don't bother. I'll just have a sandwich or something.
But we have such a big turkey. Please, Mother, please.
Well,
Did I ask all right, Mr. Gailey?
Susie, shh.
You asked fine, Susan. Dinner's at 3, Mr. Gailey.
Hello? Mrs. Walker?
Yes, Mr. Shellhammer?
Your maid said you were at Thanksgiving dinner, but I just had to tell you, your Santa Claus was stupendous.
Well, thank you.
Mr. Macy himself wants him to be our toy department Santa Claus.
Fine. Can you hire him?
Well, I already have. Oh, he's a born salesman. I just feel it.
Good. We'll talk about it in the morning. Thanks for calling, Mr. Shellhammer.
Here he is, Mr. Shellhammer. Here's Santa Claus.
Thank you, Alfred, thank you. Good morning, Santa Claus.
Good morning.
Now, before you go to the toy department, here's a list of toys that we have to push. You know, things we're overstocked on. Now, you'll find that a great many children will be undecided as to what they want for Christmas. Now, when that happens, you immediately suggest one of these items. You understand?
I certainly do.
Fine. Now, take the list, and Alfred here will show you to your throne in the toy department. And don't forget, you're working for Macy's.
Are you really Santa Claus?
Why, of course I am. And what do you want for Christmas, little boy?
I want a fire engine with a real hose that squirts real wet water, and I won't do it in the house. I'll only do it in the backyard. I promise.
And I promise you'll get your fire engine.
You see, Mama? I told you he'd get me one.
That's fine. That's just dandy. You wait here, Mortimer. Mama wants to thank Santa Claus, too.
Yes, madam?
Say, what's the matter with you?
Now. What's the trouble?
I told you before, didn't I? The kid wants a fire engine, but there isn't one to be had anywhere in town. Macy's ain't got any. Gimbel's ain't got any. Nobody's got any. My feet are killing me, and you say, okay, he gets the fire engine.
But you can get those fire engines at Schoenfeld's on Lexington Avenue. Only $4.50. Wonderful bargain.
Schoenfeld? Hey, I don't get it.
Oh, I follow the toy market very closely.
Macy's sending people to other stores? Are you kidding?
Well, the one important thing is to make the children happy, isn't it? Whether Macy's or somebody else sells the toy doesn't matter. Don't you feel that way?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, sure. Only I didn't know Macy's did. I don't get it. I just don't get
Who's
it.
next, please? Right this way to see Santa Claus. All right, little girl. You're next.
Well, of course, little girl. You want some roller skates? Well, you shall have them, too.
Oh, Mama, he's going to bring me some roller skates.
Yes, he had some fine skates here at Macy's, haven't you, Santa Claus?
Oh, they're good skates, all right, but not quite good enough. Now, I left some really wonderful roller skates at Gimbel's. I'm sure Gimbel's have just what this good little girl wants.
Mr. Shellhammer? Are you Mr. Shellhammer?
Gimbel's. Gimbel's? That's just what he did say. Gimbel's.
The sales lady said I should speak to you.
Gimbel's.
I just wanted to congratulate you and Macy's on this wonderful new stunt you're pulling. Imagine a big outfit like Macy's putting the spirit of Christmas ahead of the commercial. Well, from now on, I'm going to be a regular Macy customer. All right, Mortimer, we're going.
Gimbel's.
There's the toy department over there, Mr. Gailey.
You certainly know all about Macy's store, don't you, Susie?
Well, that's because my mother works here. But I still think it's silly, bringing me here to see Santa Claus.
Well, I just felt that if you talked to him, maybe...
Okay, Mr. Gailey. I'm certainly willing to try.
Well, what a fine young lady. And what's your name, little girl?
Susan Walker. What's yours?
Mine? Kris Kringle. I'm Santa Claus. Oh, you don't believe that, eh?
No. You see, my mother is Mrs. Walker.
Oh.
But I must say you're the best-looking Santa Claus I've ever seen.
Really?
Your beard, for instance. It doesn't have one of those things that goes over your ears.
Well, that's because it's real. Just like I'm really Santa Claus. Go ahead. Pull it.
Well, my goodness. It is real.
Yes. Now, what would you like me to bring you for Christmas?
Nothing, thank you. Whatever I want, my mother will get for me. If it's sensible and doesn't cost too much, of course.
That's quite right, Susan.
Oh, hello, Mother.
Hello, Mr. Gailey.
Hello. The explanation for this is all very simple. Your maid's mother sprained her ankle. She had to go home. She asked me to bring Susie down to you. And as long as we were here, I figured we might as well say hello to Santa Claus.
He has real whiskers, Mother.
Susan, would you mind standing over there a minute?
If you want me to.
I shouldn't have brought Susan to see Santa, is that it?
Oh, now you're making me feel completely heartless.
I'm sorry.
Don't you see, I tell Susan that Santa Claus is a myth, and you show her a very convincing old man with real whiskers. Whom is she to believe?
Yeah, that's right, isn't it?
When Susan was a baby, her father and I were divorced. Ever since then, I've protected my child by teaching her realities. If you don't believe in fairy tales and fantasy, you can never be hurt or disillusioned.
We were talking about Susie, Mrs. Walker.
And I must ask you to let me raise her as I see fit. All right, dear, we'll run along to my office now.
Alfred said you wanted to see me, Mrs. Walker.
Oh, yes. I'd be grateful if you'd please tell Susan that you're not really Santa Claus, that there actually is no such person.
But, Mrs. Walker, not only is there such a person, but here I am to prove it.
No, you must understand. I want you to tell her the truth. Now, what's your real name?
Kris Kringle, and I always tell the truth. Susan, I'll bet you're in the 1st grade.
2nd grade.
I mean your real name.
That is my real name. My goodness, the 2nd grade?
Very well. I have your employment card right here. I'll look it up on that.
That's a very cute dress, Susan.
It's from Macy's. We get 10% off.
Oh.
So, you always tell the truth, do you? Look at your employment card.
Name, Kris Kringle. Address, Brooks Memorial Home, Great Neck, Long Island. You may call the home if you care to confirm that, Mrs. Walker. It's a home for elderly gentlemen.
Would you also like me to confirm this?
What's that?
Date of birth. As old as my tongue and a little bit older than my teeth. Place of birth, North Pole. Now, really.
Why, I believe you doubt me, Mrs. Walker.
And this tops everything. Next of kin.
Oh, that.
Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, and Vixen. I'm sorry to have to do this, Mr.
Kringle?
But the Santa Claus that we had 2 years ago is back in town, and I feel that we owe it to him to...
What, have I done something wrong?
No. It's just that we feel... Oh, excuse me. Hello?
This is Mr. Shellhammer, Mrs. Walker. Drop whatever you're doing. Mr. Macy wants to see us immediately.
Oh, I'll be right up. I'm afraid I'll have to be very abrupt with you. I have to see Mr. Macy. You'll be paid for the full week, Mr. Kringle, and I'll send your check to that address.
Come right in, Mrs. Walker, Mr. Shellhammer.
Thank you, Mr. Macy.
Now, about this new policy you two initiated. Macy's Santa Claus sending customers to Gimbel's.
I can explain everything, Mr.
You don't
Macy.
have to explain a thing. Just look at my desk. 42 telegrams and over 500 phone calls. Grateful parents expressing undying gratitude to Macy's department store.
Well, you don't say.
From now on, not only will our Santa Claus continue in this manner, but every salesperson in the entire store.
You mean if we haven't got what the customer asks for, we're
to send him where he can get it. No high pressuring, no forcing a customer to take something he doesn't really want.
I think that's wonderful, Mr. Macy.
We'll be known as the helpful store, the friendly store, the store that places public service ahead of profits. And, consequently, we'll make more profits than ever. As for you, Mrs. Walker and Mr. Shellhammer, you'll find a more practical expression of my gratitude in your Christmas envelopes.
Oh, thank you.
And tell that wonderful Santa Claus I won't forget him either. Matter of fact, I'll tell him myself in the morning.
Yes, indeed, Mr. Macy.
Good night.
Good night, Mr. Macy.
And thank you again, sir. Imagine a bonus.
Yes.
Well, what's the matter with you?
Mr. Shellhammer, I just fired him.
Who?
Santa Claus.
Oh, no. No, you couldn't have.
But I did. He's crazy, Mr. Shellhammer. He really thinks he is Santa Claus.
I don't care if he thinks he's the Easter Bunny. Find him. Oh, no.
In a moment, we'll continue with Miracle on 34th Street. Say, Libby, I understand you were at that wonderful party RKO gave last month for the company of Tycoon after they finished the picture.
Yes, indeed. And I met so many interesting people. Lorraine Day introduced me to John Wayne, who co-starred with her in the picture. He was telling me what marvelous Technicolor shots they got on location in the Sierras.
Anybody else I know there?
Well, Rosalind Russell made quite a stir when she dropped in with RKO's 2 British stars, Michael Redgrave and Leo Genn.
Rosalind looking, as usual, like one of the 10 best-dressed women in America?
Well, like the best-dressed belle of 1865 this time. Because the 3 of them came right from the set of Morning Becomes Electra. Rosalind was still wearing her hoop skirts and poke bonnet.
She has a very exacting role in that picture.
In more ways than one. Her stockings took more punishment than any other part of her costume. Because the sound stage for the mansion set has real sod on it that was watered several times a day. Rosalind changed her shoes and stockings constantly because of the dampness, so her maid had 5 or 6 pairs to Lux every night.
You did say Lux.
Well, naturally. Stars as well as the Hollywood studios know how important Lux Flakes are in making stockings last longer.
We do know that's true from those famous strain tests made by an impartial laboratory. When they washed stockings with a strong soap or rubbed them with cake soap, Pop went runs in a surprisingly short time. But the very same kinds of stockings, washed with Lux Flakes, lasted twice as long. That was true of nylon, silk, rayon, and cotton alike.
That's a good tip for girls who get some of the new smoky-toned nylons for Christmas. They can make them last much longer, keep the colors lovely longer, if they Lux them regularly.
Lux helps stockings last twice as long. So, with gentle Lux care, you can get the wear of an extra pair from every pair of stockings. We continue with Act Two of Miracle on 34th Street, starring Maureen O'Hara as Doris Walker, John Payne as Fred Gailey, Edmund Gwenn as Kris Kringle, and Natalie Wood as Susan. It was a frantic few hours that Doris spent last night rushing out to the Brooks Memorial Home in Long Island and assuring Kris Kringle that Macy's wanted him back as Santa Claus. So Kris is again presiding over the crowded toy department. While in her office, Doris and Mr. Shellhammer...
Don't you understand, Mr. Shellhammer? That old man with the nice white whiskers insists that he is Santa Claus. He's out of his mind. What if he should have a fit or something? Oh, no, I've got to tell Mr. Macy.
But maybe he's only a little crazy. Anyway, you can't be sure till he's examined. We'll send him to Mr. Sawyer.
Sawyer?
In personnel. He's paid to examine employees, isn't he? Now, by the way, what do you think of this?
What is it?
A full-page ad Macy's is running in tomorrow's newspapers.
Macy's is running it. But it's all about the other stores, Gimbel's and Saks.
I know. Mr. Macy's idea to help our customers find what they want. Revolting, isn't it?
That Santa Claus certainly has started something. Oh, well, I'll get hold of him in his lunch hour and I'll send him up to Mr. Sawyer.
Changed my clothes, Mr. Sawyer, and came right up.
Oh, then that's your own beard, huh?
Oh, yes.
Interesting complex in back of that. Why do you carry a cane?
Always carry a cane, Mr. Sawyer. Well, that is when I wear street clothes. I carved this cane out of a runner from one of my old sleighs.
What's that?
What's that? With a fine, solid silver top.
Who was the first president of the United States?
Oh, give me a difficult one. Like who was vice president under John Quincy Adams?
I'm conducting this examination.
The answer is Daniel D. Tompkins. You're a rather nervous man, aren't you? Do you get enough sleep?
My personal habits are no concern of yours. Now, what hand am I holding up? Right hand? How many fingers do you see?
3? Oh, dear. And you bite your nails, too.
Oh. Stand up now. Feet together, arms extended.
Muscular coordination test? I've taken dozens of these tests. Mr. Sawyer, are you happy at home?
That will be all, Mr. Kringle. The examination's over.
Thank you.
And it may interest you to know that I've been happily married, very happily, for 22 years. Very happily married.
Delighted to hear it. Bye, Mr. Sawyer. Bye.
Miss Prawn.
Yes, sir.
Get Mrs. Walker on the phone.
Yes, sir. But your wife, Mr. Sawyer, she's called 4 times already.
Tell my big fat wife to shut up and mind her own business.
Here's Mrs. Walker, sir.
Hello?
I was just going to call you, Mr. Sawyer. There's a Dr. Pierce stopping by this afternoon at 3.
Who's Dr. Pierce?
He's the physician at the Brooks home. I thought we might discuss Mr. Kringle's case with him.
Well, there's hardly any point in discussing it, Mrs. Walker. Obviously, the old man should be discharged. So, Dr. Pierce, Kringle should be dismissed immediately and sent to a mental institution.
Oh, now, just a moment.
But he's deluded, saying that he's Santa Claus.
Well, it's a delusion for good. I found he only wants to be friendly and helpful.
No, his whole manner suggests aggressiveness. Why, look at the way he carries that cane. Well, Mrs. Walker, naturally, I can't discharge that loony, so when he exhibits his maniacal tendencies, please realize the responsibility is completely yours.
Well, I'm right back where I started.
Mrs. Walker, I assure you, Kris Kringle has no maniacal tendencies.
What if there's the slightest possibility of his causing any trouble?
Well, what trouble?
All that need happen is that a policeman asks him his name, Kris Kringle, clang, clang, and Macy's Santa Claus lands up in the psychopathic ward.
Well, you can prevent that very simply. There must be someone here at the store who could rent him a room. Then they could both come to work together. I'd just as soon he avoided that long train ride to Long Island anyway.
You mean sort of take custody of him?
Yeah.
Do you think Mr. Kringle would agree to that?
Well, I'm sure he'll agree.
Well, in that case, Now, let's see. Who do I know who could rent him a room?
I'm glad you're going to have dinner with us, Mr. Kringle.
Oh, thank you, Susan.
I'm also very glad you're going to live next door with Mr. Gailey.
Oh, why?
Because you're nice to talk to.
Oh, what a fine young man that Mr. Gailey is, eh? Just think, allowing me to share his apartment, a mere stranger.
Confidentially, he did it because Mother hinted to him.
Oh, well, anyway, I'm very grateful.
Shall I tell you what I did in school today?
Yeah, by all means. Any games?
Yes, and a very silly game, too. They played zoo, and each child was supposed to be an animal.
But, Susie, they were just pretending.
Well, that's what makes the game so silly.
Well, of course, in order to play games, you need imagination.
Oh, that's when you see things, but they're not really there.
Oh, yeah, but you know, to me, imagination is a place all by itself. Now, you've heard of the French nation, the British nation. Well, this is the imagination. A very interesting place, too. Now, how would you like to be able to make snowballs in the summertime, eh? Or be the Statue of Liberty in the morning, and in the afternoon, fly south with a flock of geese?
Oh, I'm quite sure I'd like it, but...
Oh, it's very simple. Now, look here, anyway, the next time they play zoo, you can be a monkey.
But I don't know how to be a monkey.
Don't you? Here, I'll show you. Now, first you bend over a little, like this, see? Now, let your arms hang loose, see?
Like this?
Yeah, that's fine. Now, put your hand over here and start scratching, see? That's excellent, Susan, excellent. That's as fine a bit of scratching as I've ever seen. Well, now start chattering.
Chattering?
Yes, chattering. Listen, now. See, and keep on scratching. Now then, we'll do it together, see? Chatter and scratch and chatter. Huh? Well, that's fine, Susan, fine. You're doing beautifully. Susan, you still awake?
Yes.
I've just come in to say good night. Susan, about Christmas. There must be something you'd like for Christmas.
Well, I've certainly thought about something, Mr. Kringle.
Have? What is it, eh? Tell me.
It's right here on the night table.
Oh?
See, I tore this page out of the magazine. It's a picture of a house.
Oh, that's what you want, eh? A doll's house. Colonial architecture.
Oh, no, not a doll's house. A real house.
A real house?
Yes, and if you're really Santa Claus, you can get it for me.
Oh, now, wait a minute, Susie. What could you possibly do with a big house?
Live in it with my mother. And I want a great big backyard with a great big tree to put a swing on, and a garden, and a... Oh, well, why even discuss it?
Susie, could I keep this picture just in case?
I guess so.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Gailey's waiting for me. Good night, monkey.
Good night, Mr. Kringle.
Take whichever bed you want, Mr. Kringle.
Oh, you're very kind, really. Tell me, Mr. Gailey, just what do you do for a living?
Oh, I'm a lawyer. Haslip, Sherman, and Mackenzie.
Oh. And you like living here in the city?
Well, it's convenient. But someday I'd like to get a place out on Long Island. Not a big house, just one of those junior partner deals around Manhasset.
One of those little colonial houses, eh?
Yeah. A little colonial house would be swell.
Oh. You're quite fond of Mrs. Walker, aren't you?
Yeah. A lot of good it does me. She lives in a cast iron shell that's a little difficult to penetrate.
Oh, you must try harder, Mr. Gailey. Mrs. Walker and that child are a couple of lost souls, and it's up to us to help them. Oh, well, shall I turn out the light?
Oh, no. I'm not going to be cheated out of this. You know, all my life I've wondered about it, and now I'm going to find out. Does Santa Claus sleep with his whiskers inside or outside the covers?
Oh, outside, of course. Outside, by all means.
The cold makes them grow.
Oh, thank you.
Come in, Mrs. Walker. Come in.
Thank you, Mr. Macy. I've just heard something very exciting.
You have? Well, let me tell you something very exciting. Our policy of being kind to customers has tripled our sales. Now, what do you think of that?
That's wonderful, Mr. Macy. And Gimbels thinks it's wonderful, too.
Gimbels?
Gimbels are adopting the same policy.
Well, is that so?
And it gives me an idea. As long as Gimbels are doing the same thing, why not some pictures for the newspapers?
Pictures?
Yes, you and Mr. Gimbel shaking hands.
Shaking hands? R.H. Macy and Gimbel?
Well, yes.
Yes, why not? With Santa Claus. It's a great idea, Mrs. Walker. Macy and Gimbel, shaking hands. That's enough pictures, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Well, Mr. Gimbel?
Come on, R.H. Now we'll go over to my store and get some really good pictures.
Just a minute. I have something here for Santa Claus. Here you are, Mr. Kringle, a check in appreciation of all you've done.
Macy, why, that's most kind of you.
I didn't think you were that generous, R.H. Well, that's quite a check. What are you going to do with it, Mr. Kringle?
Well, I have a friend, Dr. Pierce. He needs a new X-ray machine.
Buy the machine through the store. 10% discount.
Nonsense. Come over to Gimbel's and we'll furnish it at cost.
Keep it up, gentlemen. Keep it up. At this rate, my friend will have a whole new hospital.
How did the pictures turn out, Mr. Kringle?
Oh, fine, Alfred, fine. How about a game of checkers during lunch?
No, not today, Chris. I don't feel so good.
Huh? What's the matter, Alfred?
Oh, nothing much. You remember I was telling you how I like to play Santa Claus over at the Y and give out packages to the kids?
Yeah?
Well, I was telling Mr. Sawyer about it, and he says that's very bad, that psychologically it's all wrong.
Wrong? To be nice to children?
Well, he says guys who play Santa Claus do it because when they was young, they must have done something bad. Now they do something they think is good to make up for it, see? It's what he calls a guilt complex.
Alfred, what else has he found wrong with you?
Oh, nothing much. Just that I hate my father. I didn't know it, but he says I do.
Excuse me.
Hey, ain't you going to lunch?
Later. Right now I have an appointment with Mr. Sawyer.
What do you mean breaking into my office like this?
Are you a licensed psychiatrist?
What business is it of yours?
I have great respect for psychiatry and great contempt for meddling amateurs who go around practicing it.
Shut up!
You ought to be horsewhipped. Taking a boy like Alfred and filling him up with complexes and phobias and...
I think I'm better equipped to judge that than you.
Just because Alfred wants to be kind to children, you tell him he has a guilt complex.
Having the same delusion you couldn't possibly understand. And don't you wave that cane at me.
Either you stop analyzing Alfred or I'll go straight to Mr. Macy and tell him what a contemptible fraud you are.
Get out of here. Get out of here before I have you thrown out.
There's only one way to handle a man like you. Well, maybe this'll knock some sense into
Oh, help! Oh, my head, oh.
Good day, Mr. Sawyer.
Oh, Miss Prawn! Get me the police, get me Mrs. Walker, get me the psychopathic ward at Bellevue Hospital.
You can see Mr. Kringle now, Mr. Gailey.
Thank you, nurse. Hello, Chris.
Hello, Fred.
Chris, I've been speaking to the doctors. They said they've given you some tests.
Yeah, same old tests.
Except this time you failed to pass them. Chris, you deliberately failed them. Why?
Because I had great hopes, Fred. I had a feeling Mrs. Walker was beginning to believe in me. Now I discover she was only humoring me all the time.
But this wasn't Doris's idea at all. Mr. Sawyer had you sent here before she even knew about it.
But why didn't she come to me and explain things?
Because she didn't want to hurt you.
Oh, it's not just Mrs. Walker, Fred. Now, take Mr. Sawyer. He's contemptible, dishonest, deceitful. Yet he's out there and I'm in here. Well, if that's normal, I don't want it.
But you can't just think of yourself, Chris. What happens to you matters to a lot of other people. People like me who believe in what you stand for, and people like Susie who are just beginning to. Chris, you're letting us down.
No, maybe you're right, Fred. You... Of course you're right. I ought to be ashamed of myself. Let's get out of here.
Now, wait a minute. You flunked your mental examination, but good.
Oh, yes. Yes, so I did. Well, you're a lawyer. You fix it.
Hey, now look,
I won't let you down, and you won't let me down.
Chris, take it easy, will you? Look, there'll have to be a hearing. If you're going to be committed, it's got to go before a judge.
Well?
Well, if I can do anything at all, it'll have to be in that courtroom. Now, sit tight, Chris. I'll get an idea. I'll have to get an idea.
You, sent for me, Mr. Macy.
I certainly did, Mr. Sawyer. I brought my family to the toy department to see our Santa Claus. And our Santa Claus isn't there. He's in Bellevue.
Yes, Mr. Macy.
Because he's a lunatic.
Yes, sir. Lunatic.
Lunatic my foot. You listen to me, Sawyer. You get that case dropped right away, you'll have another lump to match the one he gave you.
But it's out of my hands. Mr. Kringle goes to court in the morning.
Well, just see that he's back in the toy department by afternoon. Now get out of here.
Gailey. Mr. Gailey.
Yes?
I've been looking all over for you. I'm Mr. Sawyer.
Oh, so you're Sawyer.
Yes. I was just speaking to the court clerk, and he said you represent Mr. Kringle. Well, I represent Mr. Macy.
Then I'll see you in court.
Oh, well, that's what I wanted to speak to you about. Now, Mr. Macy would like to drop the whole case right now. You see, we're most anxious to avoid any publicity.
No publicity, huh? That's very interesting.
Ah, then you'll cooperate?
You know something, Sawyer? You've just given me the idea I've been searching for.
Oh, good, good.
If I'm going to win this case, I'm going to have public opinion and plenty of it. And publicity's just the way to do it. Thanks, and so long, Sawyer.
Mr. Gailey! But Mr. Gailey!
Look at these newspapers, Chris. Here, Evening Dispatch. Doctors doubt sanity of Santa who launched Goodwill campaign.
Oh, my.
Daily Bulletin. Macy's Santa Claus to have lunacy hearing.
What's this one?
New York Star.
Is Kris Kringle crazy? Court case coming? Kiddies cry calamity?
You've driven the United Nations clear back to page 5. Get a good night's sleep, Chris. We go before Judge Harper at 10 tomorrow morning.
Okay.
We pause now for station identification. This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System. We'll return with Miracle on 34th Street in a moment. If it's possible to be born an actress, our guest tonight was. For Barbara Beebe Lyon is the daughter of two famous parents, Beebe Daniels and Ben Lyon, the well-known screen stars who are now on the executive end of motion pictures. You know, Barbara, you resemble your mother very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. That's a great compliment. But I know I'll have to work hard and make a place for myself. Right now I'm studying dramatics.
And visiting the studios to study techniques?
That's right. I spent a lot of time at 20th Century Fox watching them make Gentleman's Agreement. Dorothy McGuire is so natural. She's marvelous.
And Gregory Peck turns in one of his finest performances in that story of present-day intolerance.
Yes, and I was interested in Celeste Holm, too, because she plays her first straight dramatic role in Gentleman's Agreement. Afterwards, she asked me to tea in her dressing room. But an uninvited guest almost spoiled the party.
Who was that?
Gregory's dog, Perry. He's such a pet. He thought he was invited, too, and in his enthusiasm bumped Celeste's elbow, and she spilled cream over her lovely negligee. But, and this is why I'm telling you the story, Mr. Kennedy, Celeste wasn't a bit disturbed. She just handed the robe to her maid and told her to lux it right away.
She couldn't give it safer treatment. Studio wardrobe departments specify Lux Care for everything safe in water alone.
So do Mother and I. Since she's been back from England, where Mother and Dad spent the war years, we've been splurging on lingerie. But it really doesn't seem extravagant because nice things last so long with Lux Care.
Lux Care actually does keep underthings lovely 3 times as long. So any girl who gives her underthings Lux Care can have 3 times as many without spending a bit more. Instead of just replacing underthings that have grown faded and old-looking from wrong washing, she can buy extra new ones. Soon have 3 times as many because they stay lovely 3 times as long. Thank you for coming tonight, Barbara Lyon. Now, here's Act 3 of Miracle on 34th Street, starring Maureen O'Hara as Doris Walker, John Payne as Fred Gailey, Edmund Gwenn as Chris, and Natalie Wood as Susan. For a few weeks, a jolly elderly gentleman named Kris Kringle has been working minor miracles as the Santa Claus of Macy's department store. But now his sanity has been seriously questioned. And in a crowded courtroom, Judge Harper listens patiently as the assistant district attorney summons Chris to the witness stand.
Now, this is not a trial, Mr. Kringle. It's just a hearing, so you don't have to answer any questions. Now then, where do you live, please?
Well, it seems to me that's what this hearing will decide, won't it?
Mr. Kringle, do you believe that you are Santa Claus?
Of course I do.
That's all, Your Honor. The state rests its case.
Well, Mr. Gailey? Your Honor, Mr. Mara contends my client is not sane because he believes he is Santa Claus.
An entirely logical conclusion. Anyone who thinks he's Santa Claus is crazy.
Your Honor, you believe yourself to be Judge Harper. Yet no one questions your sanity because you are Judge Harper, do they?
Mr. Kringle is the subject of this sanity hearing, not I.
Very well, Your Honor. But I intend to prove that Mr. Kringle is Santa Claus.
Mr. Mara, I thought you said this was a cut-and-dried sanity hearing.
I thought it was, Your Honor.
In the view of Mr. Gailey's statement, I'll have to review the entire background of this case. Court's adjourned till tomorrow morning.
Hello, Doris. I'm sorry I'm late, but get ready. We're really going to celebrate tonight.
What are we celebrating?
Well, didn't you read the papers? Santa's mouthpiece throws bombshell in New York Supreme Court.
Fred, you're not really serious about this. You can't possibly prove that Chris is Santa Claus.
Well, you saw Mr. Macy and Mr. Gimble shake hands. That wasn't possible either.
And what does your firm have to say about it? Hayslip and Mackenzie and the rest of them.
That I've jeopardized their prestige, and either I drop this impossible case or they'll drop me.
You see?
So I beat them to it. I quit.
Fred, you threw away your career because of a sentimental whim?
Well, I'll open my own office.
And what kind of clients will you get?
Oh, probably a lot of people like Chris who are being pushed around. You know, that's the only fun in law anyway. Doris, look, don't you have any faith at all in me?
Oh, it's not a question of faith. It's common sense.
But faith is believing in things when common sense tells you not to. It's not just Chris that's on trial. It's everything he stands for. Human kindness and love.
Fred, listen. We've seen a lot of each other the last couple of weeks. I've become very fond of you. We've talked about some wonderful plans, haven't we? And then you do this. You go on an idealistic binge, throw away your security, and you expect me to be happy about it.
I expect too much. Is that it? Well, that's that, I guess. Good night, Doris.
Hello. Yes, this is Mr. Mara. Well, can't I wait till tomorrow? I'm eating Who's been subpoenaed? Well, how do you think I feel about it? I'll see you tomorrow.
Who's that, dear?
R.H. Macy's been subpoenaed.
Oh, my.
Oh, those reporters. They make me look like a sadistic monster who likes nothing better than to drown pussycats and tear wings off of butterflies.
Dear, quiet. Tommy's still awake.
Oh, yeah.
It'd just break his heart if he knew what his daddy's doing.
I'm doing my job as assistant district attorney.
Well, I'm not so sure, but that I agree with him. Mr. Kringle looks like a very nice old man, and I don't see why you have to keep persecuting him.
I'm not persecuting him. I'm prosecuting him. I like the old man, too, but there's nothing I can do about it.
You know something, Thomas? Sometimes I wish I'd married a butcher or a plumber.
Well, if I lose this case, it's very possible you'll get your wish. R.H. Macy, I wonder what he's going to pull tomorrow.
Proceed with the witness, Mr. Gailey.
Now then, Mr. Macy, if you recognize the defendant, please tell us who he is.
Chris Kringle, of course.
Do you believe him to be of sound mind?
Sound mind? I wish I had a dozen like him.
Mr. Macy, you're under oath. Do you believe that man is Santa Claus?
Well, now, that's rather delicate.
Careful, R.H. Just think of those headlines tomorrow. Macy admits his Santa Claus is fraud.
You keep out of this, Gimble.
What did you say?
Nothing, Mr. Mara.
I wish you would. Is that man Santa Claus?
Yes. In my opinion, he most certainly is.
Your Honor, there is no such person as Santa Claus, and everybody knows it.
Can you prove there isn't any?
I won't even try. I'll not waste the court's time with such childish nonsense. Your Honor, the prosecution requests an immediate ruling from this court. Is there or is there not a Santa Claus?
Well, now, the court will take a short recess to consider the question.
Hello, Henry.
Why, Charlie, what are you doing here?
Can't an old friend visit you in your chambers? And if you ask me, you never needed a friend like you do now.
This Kringle case? Well, I certainly don't see what they're making such a fuss about.
Henry, that's Santa Claus you got out there on trial for lunacy. This case is dynamite, and you're coming up for re-election soon.
Charlie, you know what happened last night? Martha brought the grandchildren over. They wouldn't kiss Grandpa. They wouldn't even talk to me.
There, you see what I mean? If you rule there is no Santa Claus, you better start looking at that chicken farm right now.
I'm a responsible judge. How can I seriously rule that there is a Santa Claus?
Because of what happens if you don't. The kids read about it, and they don't hang up their stockings. Now, what happens to all the toys that are supposed to be in those stockings? Nobody buys them. The toy manufacturers have to lay off employees. By now, you've got the AFL and the CIO against you. They're not going to say it with votes, eh? Oh, the department stores are going to love you, too. Yes, sir, Henry. And what about the Salvation Army? They got a Santa Claus in every street corner, and they take in a lot of money to help the poor. But go ahead, Henry. You go in there and rule there isn't any Santa Claus. But if you do, you can count on getting just 2 votes. Your own and that district attorney's out there.
1 vote, Charlie. He's a Republican. Oh, well, let's get this over with. The question of Santa Claus seems to be largely a matter of opinion. The tradition of American justice demands a broad and unprejudiced view of such a controversial matter.
But, Your Honor...
This court, therefore, intends to keep its mind open. We shall ask for evidence on either side.
But the burden of proof clearly rests with my opponent. Can he produce any evidence to support his views?
If Your Honor please, I can. Will Thomas Mara please take the stand?
Who? Me?
No, Thomas Mara, Jr. I believe he and his mother are both in court today.
Hi, Papa.
Hi.
Tommy, do you believe in Santa Claus?
I sure do. He gave me a brand new sled last year.
And, what does Santa Claus look like, Tommy?
Well, there he is, sitting right over there.
Your Honor,
Overruled.
Tell me, Tommy, why are you so sure there's a Santa Claus?
Because my Papa told me so. Didn't you, Papa?
Thank you, Tommy. You can go back to your mother now.
See you later, Papa.
You certainly will. Your Honor!
Don't forget, Santa Claus. This year I want a football helmet.
Now, don't worry, Tommy. You'll get it.
Mr. Kringle, if you don't mind.
I'm sorry, sir.
Your Honor, the state of New York concedes the existence of a Santa Claus. But, in so conceding, we demand that Mr. Gailey stop presenting personal opinion as evidence. I insist he submit authoritative proof that Mr. Kringle here is the one and only Santa Claus.
Well, Mr. Gailey, are you prepared to show that Mr. Kringle is Santa Claus on the basis of unprejudiced authority?
Well, no, not now. I need a little time.
Why not now?
Tomorrow, Your Honor.
Very well. Court's adjourned till tomorrow morning.
Phew.
Now come, Susan, dear. Finish your supper.
But I can't, Mother. All those things they're saying in the newspapers about Mr. Kringle and Mr. Gailey.
Susan, they're having this trial because he says he's Santa Claus.
But he's so kind and nice and jolly. He's not like anyone else I know. He must be Santa.
You know something? I think perhaps you're right.
Is Mr. Kringle sad now, Mother?
I'm afraid he must be.
Then I'll write him a letter. Maybe that'll make him feel better. I'll cheer him up and I'll tell him I believe him.
Oh, postman.
Yeah, lady?
Oh, would you mind taking this letter?
Oh, sure, lady. We're going straight down to the post office now. Okay, Louie, take it away. What do you know, Louie? Another letter for Santa Claus. Hey, here's a new one. Instead of North Pole, this kid's got it addressed to Chris Kringle, New York County Courthouse. Well, the kid's right. Huh? Oh, yeah, sure. They got him on trial down there. He claims he's Santa Claus and the DA claims he's nuts.
Hey, Frankie, I got an idea.
Yeah?
How many Santa Claus letters do you think we got down there in the dead letter office?
Oh, who knows? Must be 50,000. Bags and bags all over the joint. You mean?
But, Frankie, why not? Wouldn't it be nice to get rid of them all? Wouldn't it?
Boy, oh boy. Look, Louie, as soon as we get to the post office, we go see the supervisor. You know something? I bet we both get promoted.
And since the defense has been unable to submit one shred of proof that Kris Kringle is the one and only Santa Claus, and since tonight is Christmas Eve, I ask, Your Honor, that this hearing be terminated without further delay.
I protest, Your Honor. I do have evidence.
5 minutes ago, you said you didn't.
During Mr. Marrow's oration, the bailiff handed my client the evidence I refer to.
What evidence?
This letter, Your Honor.
Yes, Mr. Kringle?
It's from Susan Walker. She believes in me. This letter means more to me than anything in the world.
That letter, Your Honor, was delivered by the United States Post Office, an official agency of the federal government. The Post Office Department is one of the largest business concerns in the world. Last year, it did a gross volume of over $1 billion, and
Your Honor, I'm sure we're all gratified that the post office is getting along so well. But what bearing has it on the sanity of that man?
My point is that the Post Office Department is a model of efficiency. Furthermore, the laws of this country make it a criminal offense to willfully misdirect mail or intentionally deliver it to the wrong party.
The state of New York is second to none in its admiration of the Post Office Department. We're very happy to concede Mr. Gailey's claims.
For the record, Mr. Marrow?
For the record. Anything to get on with this case.
Thank you. Your Honor, that letter just received by Mr. Kringle is positive proof that a
One letter is hardly positive proof.
I have further exhibits, Your Honor, but I hesitate to produce them.
Come, Mr. Gailey. Put them here on my desk.
But, Your Honor...
I said put them on my desk.
All right, boys, bring them in. Put them right there.
Your Honor, what is this?
Empty those mail sacks on Judge Harper's desk.
But we got 6 truckloads out there.
Bring them in or be fined for contempt of court.
Now, just a second here.
We'll do it, Your Honor. We'll do it. True rain, true sleet, true courtrooms, anything. We deliver.
Mr. Gailey.
Your Honor, every one of those letters and every one of those mail sacks is addressed to Santa Claus. The Post Office Department has delivered them. Therefore, the Post Office Department recognizes Kris Kringle to be the one and only Santa Claus.
Since the United States government declares this man to be Santa Claus, this court will not dispute it. Case dismissed. And for heaven's sake, get this mail out of my courtroom!
So as soon as I got out of court, I came straight to Mace's to see you, Doris.
Oh, Chris, I'm so glad you won.
Well, we're having a big Christmas party at the Brooks home tomorrow morning. I'd like so much to see you and Susie there.
We'll be there, Chris. Oh, couldn't you just come home now and have dinner with us?
Now? Tonight? Me? My goodness, Doris, it's Christmas Eve. Oh. Alfred, look. Look who came all the way out here to the home just for our Christmas party.
Chris, it's Mr. Macy.
Mr. Gimble, too. Oh, excuse me, Alfred. Mrs. Walker and Susie have to leave now, and I don't want to go without my seeing.
But, Susie, darling, you got so many presents.
That's the one I wanted. That's the one Mr. Kringle was going to get for me.
Well, what was it?
It doesn't matter. I knew I wouldn't get it, but I thought he'd at least tell me why.
Susie, I'm sorry, Susie. I tried my best,
You
but
couldn't get it because you're not Santa Claus.
Susan!
Just a nice old man, like Mother said.
But I was wrong when I told you that. You must believe in Mr. Kringle and keep right on doing it. You must have faith in him.
But that doesn't make sense, Mother.
Faith is believing in things when common sense tells you not to.
Huh?
I mean, just because things don't turn out the way you want them to the first time, you've still got to believe in people. I found that
Hello,
out.
Doris.
Oh, Fred.
Mr. Gailey! Oh, Mr. Gailey!
Merry Christmas, Susie.
Gosh, you just got here and we're just ready to leave.
Oh, I've been here, and if you're ready to leave, I'll drive you home.
Well, before you go, here's a map I've made for you. Now, you'll miss a lot of traffic. About 4 miles south, you will see Ashley Avenue. That's the street you want, Ashley Avenue.
Thanks, Chris. And a Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas to you, Fred. And to you, my dear. And to you, Susie.
I believe, Mr. Kringle. I do. It's silly, I suppose, but I believe.
I don't understand it, Fred. The map Chris gave us definitely says Ashley Avenue. We've been on Ashley Avenue now.
Stop the car! Oh, stop the car, please!
Susie, what is it, darling? What's the matter?
There it is, the house! The house!
Susie,
What in the
what's
world?
She's running into that house.
At least there's no one home. It's brand new. It's just been built.
Yeah, for sale, it says. For sale.
What on earth is that child up to?
Susie! Hey, Susie!
Here I am upstairs!
Come right down. You know you shouldn't run around in other people's houses. That's strange.
Yeah, I'll say.
No, I mean this house. I've seen this house somewhere. I know I have. Maybe in a magazine
Mother,
or...
it's our house. It's the one I asked him for, Mr. Kringle.
Mr. Kringle?
I know it is. Oh, you were right, Mommy. You were right.
Susie.
Mommy told me if things didn't turn out just the way you wanted them to at first, you've still got to believe. And I kept believing, and you were right, Mommy. Mr. Kringle is Santa Claus.
Now where are you going?
In back to see if there's a swing. Oh, there is one. There is one.
You told her that about believing?
Well, you told me, Fred.
Sign outside. For sale, huh? Well, we can't let her down, can we?
I never really doubted you. It was just my silly common sense.
It even makes sense to believe in me now. I must be a pretty good lawyer. I'd take a little old man and legally prove to the world that he's Santa Claus. Now, you know that couldn't...
Fred.
What's the matter?
There in the corner by the fireplace.
Oh, no. No.
It can't be. It couldn't.
A cane. Chris's cane. Why, there couldn't be two canes like that anywhere in the world.
Silver handle and all.
Hey, you know something? Maybe I didn't do such a wonderful thing after all.
Our stars will return for their curtain calls in a moment. Let's look in for a moment on the Smiths. In a rash moment, Bill has offered to wash the dishes.
Here's the Lux. Just shake a little in the dishpan. Hey there, that's enough.
Oh, why be stingy? I like lots of suds.
Well, so do I. But you'll get plenty with a little Lux.
Hey. It looks just like a bubble bath.
Dishcloth is there under the sink. You know, those suds won't flatten out either, like that stuff I used last week. You watch.
Well, at least you used that other box up fast.
I'll say. It's another reason I'm back to Lux Flakes. Why, I'll bet Lux does most twice as many dishes, because a little goes such a long way. Well, don't just admire those suds all night.
Come back here and dry.
Silly, that's a waste of time. Just rinse those dishes with hot water, and they'll dry by themselves.
You know, I was just thinking, can I count this as my good deed for the day if I get dishpan hands for your sake?
Dishpan hands, nothing. You won't get red, rough hands with Lux Flakes in the dishpan. See? What's wrong with mine?
Not so bad. Not so bad. Next time you do the dishes.
Well, ladies, if your husband doesn't do the dishes, the next best thing is to do them yourself with Lux Flakes in the dishpan. You'll avoid dishpan hands. In fact, if strong soaps have been making your hands red and rough, just change to Lux Flakes and see how soon your hands are soft and smooth again. Now, here's Mr. Keeley with our stars. Mr. Keeley in Washington, D.C., and our stars on the stage of the Lux Radio Theater in Hollywood.
For a most delightful holiday performance, all our thanks to Maureen O'Hara, John Payne, Edmund Gwenn, and Natalie Wood, who return to the spotlight for a curtain call. From Washington to Hollywood and points between, you've helped to put us in the mood for Christmas.
Thanks, Bill. But we missed you at tonight's performance.
As I miss being there, believe me. But here in Washington, Edmund Gwenn sounded just as convincing as Santa Claus as he must have on your stage in Hollywood.
Well, Bill, I wonder how many people knew that Teddy Gwen really was Macy's Santa Claus in their holiday parade.
Is that right, Mr. Gwen?
Yes, that's right, Natalie. In fact, I've been Santa Claus so much I'm beginning to really believe in myself.
I don't wonder, Teddy. I'm certainly going to leave the latchkey in the mailbox for you Christmas Eve.
No, just put a windsock in the chimney, Bill.
You really plan to make the rounds on Christmas Eve, eh, Teddy?
Well, you can't let millions of children down.
You know, Mr. Gwenn, you sound as if you did believe in Santa Claus.
He's right, too. Didn't I just prove it?
Well, why don't we leave it to the Lux Radio Theater audience?
Yes. How about it, folks? Do you believe in Santa Claus?
Well, that ought to reassure the children in the audience tonight.
Tell us, Bill, how's the picture going down in Washington?
Splendidly. In fact, if all's well, I'm happy to say I'll be back for our big New Year's show next Monday night.
Something special, Mr. Keeley?
Very special, Natalie. A musical hit to warm the hearts of every member of the family.
Well, let's hear what gives, Bill. Sounds exciting.
Exciting it is. A play and cast that's topped our list of listeners' requests. And our stars are the one and only Frank Sinatra, the lovely and talented singing star Katherine Grayson, and the ever-popular Gene Kelly. In Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer's great hit, Anchors Aweigh.
I hope you have Frank singing the wonderful tunes from that picture, Bill.
Yes, indeed. And Katherine and Gene, too.
Sounds like a great way to finish out the old year, Bill. Congratulations.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. And Merry Christmas to all four of you. Once again, the world looks forward to another Christmas. It would be idle to say that peace reigns everywhere on earth, that men confront the future with untroubled hearts. But this much we can say, that for one day the world is brought together by the worship of the Prince of Peace. And if that spirit can burn so brightly for a single day, we have cause to hope that it may someday shine forever in men's hearts. On behalf of Lever Brothers Company and of us at the Lux Radio Theater, may I wish all of you the happiest of holidays. We invite you all to join us again next Monday evening when the Lux Radio Theater presents Frank Sinatra, Katherine Grayson, and Gene Kelly in Anchors Aweigh. This is William Keeley saying good night and Merry Christmas.
Maureen O'Hara and Natalie Wood appeared through the courtesy of 20th Century Fox, producers of Captain from Castile and Daisy Kenyon. Edmund Gwenn appeared by arrangement with Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, producers of Cass Timberlane, starring Spencer Tracy and Lana Turner. Heard in our cast tonight were Joseph Kearns as Sawyer, Alan Reed as Macy, Bill Johnstone as Mara, and Herbert Butterfield as Judge Harper. Our music was directed by Louis Silvers. And this is your announcer, John Milton Kennedy, reminding you to join us again next Monday night to hear Anchors Aweigh with Frank Sinatra, Katherine Grayson, and Gene Kelly.
Pepsodent won by 3-1. Yes, in a recent survey, families throughout America compared new Pepsodent toothpaste with the brands they'd been using at home. By an overwhelming average of 3-1, they preferred new Pepsodent with Irium over any other brand they tried. They said new Pepsodent toothpaste tastes better, makes breath cleaner, makes teeth brighter. Yes, with families who made comparison tests, Pepsodent won by 3-1.
Be sure to listen next Monday night to the Lux Radio Theater presentation of Anchors Aweigh with Frank Sinatra, Katherine Grayson, and Gene Kelly. Stay tuned for My Friend Irma, which follows immediately over most of these stations. This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.
If you are ever in the San Francisco Bay Area and still love collecting or renting DVDs or VHS tapes, come check out Captain Video in San Mateo at 2837 South El Camino Real. Captain Video is open 6 days a week and closed on Wednesday, and one of the last traditional video stores still running in the United States. New movies you can rent for $2.99 a day. Old movies you can rent for $2.99 for 5 days. And if renting isn't your thing, you can also purchase anything you find in the store. Be sure to tell Ira that you heard about Captain Video from the Damn Good Movie Memories podcast. Happy renting and happy collecting at Captain Video.
Come hang out and chill with Brian A. Davis and the Bad Beat. Wednesdays, 11 p.m. Eastern, right here on thatmetalstation.com.